they say you shouldn't be heroes or you shouldn't be fan zone of anybody. I've never subscribed to that. Never, ever, ever. If I meet somebody famous, I meet somebody famous would be, yeah. Um, and from that point on, we just chatted, and so many people have said, "Have you worked with Toyota people?" And I've said, "No, never met them, hardly ever met them." But I now know three Toyota people, ex-Toyota leaders, and they're
Mhm.
just so different. They're just so different in the way that they talk. So all of that coaching and coaching of others that they do, they just turn out to be better people.
Welcome to A State of Readiness, a podcast set as a fireside chat with business leaders to discuss what it takes for a company to be in a state of readiness and become a high-performance organization, with your host, Joseph Paris.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of State of Readiness. I'm your host, Joseph Paris. My guest today is Tim Fox, founder of Gemba Vision and author of the new book, Swarm of Change. Tim has over 25 years' experience and success in designing and leading transformational culture change programs across a range of environments. Working with a diversity of companies in as many diverse challenges, Tim has acquired an understated wisdom. As such, he has become a seasoned continuous improvement coach with a proven track record of delivering practical, hands-on solutions. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm grand, thank you very much. Very good indeed.
I'm glad that we were able to make this happen after some back and forth.
Yeah,
It's always a challenge sometimes getting two people's calendars to overlay, especially when they're in dramatically different time zones.
absolutely. Yes. Yes. No, it's good to finally have the conversation as it were.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you were mentioning in our briefing that we both have a colleague slash friend in common in John Tudor.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So John Tudor and I go back to Manufacturing Institute days where I was working there as a practitioner and he came along as part of the marketing team and he actually put together and ran several events that I then attended. And certain people he introduced me to are in fact people I've reconnected with in the last year in helping me answer a very simple question that I had around the book. So yeah, John Tudor's played quite a significant part, albeit that you didn't really know it. So yeah,
Yeah, that's it. So we might have actually had a conversation face to face in the past, but you know, these conferences and these summits and
yeah,
whatnot, there's a sea of people. So I'm glad that we did connect up for this. Now, obviously, you're from the UK, yes?
absolutely, yes, yeah.
Okay, okay. Sometimes you have an Aussie or something like that transplanting back to the UK or what have you, and you've owned Gemba Vision. Is that the name of your firm?
That's right. Yeah, been there
Okay.
delivering improvement for just over 5 years now, actually. Yeah.
So 5 years you've had your consultancy. Now, what did
Mhm.
you do before that?
Ooh, so before that, I was with Red Zone, which is an online app, it was in food and drink for a long, long time, certainly through the period that I was there, and some pharma as well. And I was heading up the UK coaching services.
Hmm.
So I delivered change with clients, but I also then was part of the solution selling team as well. So I went and sat in front of teams as they were wanting the software demoed and a look round and seeing if it was a good technical fit as well. So I was part of all of those discussions over the
Hmm.
5 years.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I'm looking back at my career. All right, so I this year, what is it, 2025, August of 2025, I've owned my consultancy for 40 years. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think back on how I became me. And I recall like when I was a kid, taking my bicycle, for a couple of miles to these stores and buying like cakes and candies and soda pop and whatnot, and then setting up a stand and selling it to the neighborhood kids. All right. and then getting a job early on at the age of 13, my first job, working as a farmhand for a company that for a gentleman and a company that was a nursery for plants. And
Hmm.
ever since I was 13 years old, I've always had a job. All right.
Hmm.
So uh, and I've always liked to work.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and of course, I had a penchant for, enjoyment for, making money, but also learning the skills in order to make money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a different skill set than most people might have. So, what about you? When you're in your younger years,
Hmm.
did you see a trajectory forming to ultimately Gemba Vision?
Um, Not as such. I've always loved engineering and manufacturing. Always loved it. From a very young age, I was fixing bikes with my dad because he used to buy and sell second-hand bikes and push bikes and do them up and then sell them on for a small amount of profit. Is what he always did as I suppose you'd call it a side hustle nowadays. But then I started at 12 on a milk round and we ran on the milk round. It was me and another lad generally, and we literally would run from one place to another. And it was just very, very effective. Where everyone else was trundling along electric milk carts, we were there in our diesel transit, herring around at 5:30 in the morning, making money so that I could follow my real passion at the time, which was getting into kayaking or canoeing, as they used to call it. And that was my passion, and that came out of being involved in sort of the Scouts Brigade. So I've been involved in that all the way through, and really that sense of having to survive because our scout group was, bless them, were were really the raggedy crew. If there was any sort of group event across the district or anything, we were the ones who would always turn up and win. But we'd win under terrible circumstances. So we did this timed hike once, and we won because at every checkpoint we hid just round the corner and then we turned up absolutely bob on time despite the fog and everything else. But we hadn't planned our escape route, so we weren't following the letter of the law, so we weren't allowed to hold the next year's event because we'd failed drastically on not complying. But we were always seen as the underdogs, and got involved in many fundraising activities to keep the scout group alive, basically. So that's that's sort of a lot of my background, and through that, we were the underdog in the district. I was one of the very few scouts in the district to actually get a Chief Scout Award, and it was even more seen as preposterous that somebody from Fifth Bramall Scout Group would get a Chief Scout Award because it's just not what we did.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that resilience, that getting on with things, and doing the best that you can was sort of not drilled into me, not at all, but it was something I've always had a passion with from a very, very young early age. And then at 16, I started an apprenticeship. So I'd had enough of school and wanted to do something else. And little did I know I'd slipped into 4 years more of education without even realizing it. So full
So,
time.
so you're a scout. Now, I was a scout too for, until they kicked me out, when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And, Lord Baden-Powell was a big actor here in Scouts. And I believe he was a big actor there in the
Mm, yeah.
UK for
Yeah.
scouting too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, a friend of mine in South Africa, where Baden Powell was stationed for quite some time, gave me a book on his basically a biography on his life, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
But at I believe you said at 16 you started an apprenticeship, and what was that
Yeah.
apprenticeship in?
So it was mechanical and production engineering with a heavy engineering firm. and nothing to do with me, but they, at the time that I was there, they had engine sets being delivered to Abu Dhabi and Dubai
Mhm.
so that they could pump the oil across the desert. And if you look at photos from sort of late 80s through to now, that's essentially what they're able to do, pump the oil across the desert. The engines ran on that crude oil, and that's where the wealth of that country is born from, really. But
Mhm.
also, as I came out of my apprenticeship, I mean, these were big engines. These were static diesel engines for power generation, pumping applications. A lot of the nuclear power stations would have them as emergency water pumping stations, and got to see a couple of those facilities as well during my apprenticeship.
Mhm.
But as I finished, they'd got a contract for British Rail to produce a Class 60 loco engine, 104 engines over 2 years. And as I came out of my apprenticeship, PricewaterhouseCooper were involved, and they were basically putting lean in, but it wasn't called that because nobody had invented the name then. So I I lived a lot of when I read the goal later on in life, I realized I'd lived that, getting rid of production bottlenecks. I was the admin guy, if you like. There was a jig and tool guy who he'd just look at a machine and go, yeah, that'll fit. And I was like, how do you get that? Many years of experience. So me and Steve would go around the Northwest looking at smaller engineering shops, looking at what capacity they'd got, looking at what tools they'd got, the jigs that we'd got, and then work out sort of a common set of parts that could then relieve those production bottlenecks all the time, whilst the union were playing lots of fun and games. So we'd agree it all, we'd have shop works conveners meetings where it was all agreed. And then you'd go to the area and there would be nothing there. All of the stuff that had been sort of scheduled and marshaled into the area during the last 2 days had all disappeared and you couldn't
Mhm.
find it. And I'd just walk down the bay as I was walking back to the office, and I'd go, I don't know who's got it, I don't know where it's gone, but please check with the works convener because it's all been signed off. And I'd say this in a very loud voice. And magically, I'd walk back 20 minutes, half an hour later, and it all reappeared because people were frightened, quite rightly
So,
so.
I'm trying to get you took an apprenticeship for mechanical engineering. Now,
Hmm.
what's
Yeah.
the difference between an apprenticeship for mechanical engineering and going to university for mechanical engineering? I guess maybe that's a subtle nuance that I'm catching here, but maybe there's no difference. Hands,
Hands
hands.
on, hands on, hands on. So the first 6 months were in the training school with all of the other apprenticeships, and we were then completing um, hand skills. So we learned how to cut and file things flat and square. Learned how to operate a lathe and a milling machine. So I've got a pair of pliers that I made, a scribe block, a test block that had all sorts of holes drilled and tapped in it, filed flat and square. And if it wasn't right, and Steve, the old training manager, would look at it and he'd go, send it off, do it again. It was basically from the ground up. So I learned all of those hand skills, if you like, and machine skills, and went through the whole plethora of understanding pneumatics, hydraulics, all of those sorts of things through college, and then got to apply some of those things hands on back when I was doing my 6 months period back at the factory, as it were. So
Okay,
that was the
so
main difference.
so you had various jobs and roles for several years.
Mm.
Any people, individuals stand out that guided you or influenced you one way or another on your journey, or otherwise you would call a mentor, perhaps?
Oh, there's been plenty, absolutely plenty. I've hooked up with quite a few this year who perhaps I haven't spoken to in the last sort of 10, 12 years, something like that. So I worked for British Steel Distribution for 4 years before coming back to back to the Northwest where I grew up. So we spent a few years away. So having got married, went and did a master's degree, which was a 2-year gig because I'd never got a degree. And that again was very practically based. And that was working on an inhaler valve that failed after 24 hours and they'd scrapped 24 hours of production. So I worked on that with some other team members. And there was the guy who ran the course, Graham Fuller. He just gave me so many insights as to how to approach things. And the whole idea was be that engineer in society, be that person who is capable, but also doesn't mock the industry as well. So don't be too big for your britches, but by the same token, stand proud of the profession that you sit in. So that taught me an awful lot. But then I suppose from there, I was very fortunate. I went into a company, only got a summer job, and then they said we'll sponsor you through your final year of your masters, and I learned so much. Again, it wasn't called lean at the time, but we freed up a third of the production floor space by relaying out the floor plan of the facility using a process that then went on to win the Queen's Award for Technology. I think it was Queen's Award for Technology. I think it was that. And it was amazing to be in that space at that time. But then a few years on from that, I worked for British Steel Distribution, and I was just let loose in facilities, going and putting OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, in place at lots of different facilities. And at the time, I just didn't realize what was going on. There was a group of people from Cardiff turned up and they were training me. So John Bacino taught me the numbers game for workplace organization. I mean, it really doesn't get much better than that, or does it? Because Nick Rich and me would often chew over TPM stuff. He came back and we had a number of conversations about it. I was also taught SMED by David Brunt. Don't tell him, but there's a better way than he showed me. It's not in the book.
It'll be our secret.
Yeah. But yeah, all of those people. Peter Hines was another one, and I've contacted some of those. But during that period of time, it was a new facility that was set up in central operations, and there was a chap there, Steve Norgrove, who had been at GKN, and he said, "This is what we need in the business." And there was 2 teams of 3, and he only told me very, very recently that, unbeknown to me, as I went into sites, he was my air support. So if there was some rumblings and things that weren't going on, that other directors weren't particularly happy about, Steve would be there smoothing the waters in the background. But we made some massive transformations there. Again, I was dead lucky. Rob, who I reported to, our team of 3, he put me on a TPM course that was Peter Wilmot's course. So again, absolutely first class. And learned an awful lot in that 1-week course, which I've reapplied many times over. And again, Peter was very gracious with his time. He came back to have private sessions with me and Rob and Martin, the 3 of us. And we must have met 3 or 4 on other occasions. And I was chatting with John Pacino at the True North Excellence Conference, and I was saying, wasn't it a great time? Because we used to have the overhead projectors, and you could almost pick what you wanted to talk about rather than be stuck with a PowerPoint presentation. And we were just reminiscing about, how good those times were, because he did the same. He had an overhead projector and you just picked out the slides or hand wrote on the slides, as opposed to a PowerPoint deck, which some people think you still need to go through all 180 slides, even if your audience is falling asleep.
So an actual overhead projector where you write on the transparency and it projects onto.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Or if you're a real flash, you already have them pre-printed.
Yeah, right.
So yeah,
that's amazing. So eventually you decided to strike out on your own. Now it's a different skill set. being an employee, even if you're doing projects and whatnot, and then, saying, I'm going to hang out my own shingle. And you did that, I believe you mentioned 5 years ago.
Yeah, but I'd also done it a few years before that as well.
Okay.
I I worked for the manufacturing advisory service straight after the British Steel. So up in Manchester, it was an ideal opportunity to move up and move back to sort of where we grew up and all of that for myself and my wife. And that manufacturing advisory service was, again, it was like running your own consultancy in some respects, but somebody else was paying you. So you'd literally pick up the yellow pages. Google wasn't quite there. And you'd ring manufacturers and you would say, we have got this offer. We can come and help. We will come and spend a good chunk of the day with you, advise you on what opportunities there are, and you can go and do it yourself. Or let's see where it takes us. And then from there, it was sort of selling yourself into the organization, but a subsidized rate because the government were doing absolutely a cracking job of supporting manufacturers without sounding too political.
Right. Do
And
they still do that? Does that organization still exist in the UK?
it exists up in Scotland at the moment. It
Hmm.
doesn't exist in England and Wales at the moment, but they actually prototyped a service up in Scotland whilst I was there, and I actually chaperoned and interviewed some of the guys who went up and started in Scotland. But I did that for 4 years. Did another business, ran a business as a operations director for a couple of years, and then unfortunately 2008 impacted in 2009 on the business, and I just said, look, I'll go back to where I was. So I had another 4 fun years before then starting my first business, and that lasted a couple of years before Red Zone nabbed me because one of the guys who was one of the joint owners, I'd mentored him when we were at British Steel together. So
Hmm.
he contacted me and said, "Do you fancy being part of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not? Why not?"
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But then you decided to strike out on your own again, and you've been doing that for 5 years, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what
Yeah.
else would you
So
do when
so
there's a
basically,
pandemic?
yeah,
You'd just
right.
start
So
your own business, wouldn't you?
yeah, yeah, that was a crazy time, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All of the testing and you can't come to site, but you can join on a Zoom call or
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean,
But yeah, that's when I set up basically.
I remember coming back. I had a crazy couple of weeks in 2020. I was in Ireland, and then I was coming back from Kuwait the end of
Mm,
February through Istanbul, and they had the heat cameras set up already for people. If you had a temperature or
yeah.
something like that. And then, like the beginning of March, the world stopped spinning, and I was like going a little nuts because I'm used to being on the road. I'm used to,
Mhm.
flying here, flying there, doing work. And like now for like 2 months, I was grounded, and I was going a little bit stir crazy. And I
Yeah.
got a call from a nursing home network in upstate New York. And they needed some help. And so I jetted over beginning of June, middle of June, and it was very, very eerie because I'm at
Mm.
Frankfurt. I'm walking through the Frankfurt airport, and there's like nobody there. And I
Yeah.
get on the airplane, and the passenger, the staff outnumbered the passengers. I took a picture of it. And it's a section of the plane that I was in. I was the only one in it,
Yeah.
and it was just very, very weird. But
Yeah.
I had to take a test, right? Because I'm with a bunch of elder people.
Yeah.
And here I am, a process guy. You're a process guy. The
Yeah.
the amount of ridiculousness was astounding. When I say ridiculousness, I mean things that just don't make sense. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like I had to have a test, and they'd put this stick, into your brain, and I wouldn't get the results for like 4 days. But yet in those 4 days, I'm working with the company. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
here I am. If
Yeah.
I had it, I am already risking everybody else, but that's the way it was. And the second time I was having it, uh, there's an administrator of the test, And then there's assistant. I'm standing next to the assistant, and this person's getting the test. And he's like, do you have to put that stick way into my brain? And I made the glib remark, it's the only way that the government could be sure that the chip is properly inserted. And the assistant looks at me and says, we're glad you're with the program. And I'm thinking this is maybe a little bit too crazy. And I'm walking around Frankfurt, and the police are walking around with these poles that are 2 meters long to make
Yeah.
sure people are social distancing, right? But
Yeah.
they're holding the pole in the middle, which means that they're violating social distancing by enforcing it. And I think this is the bane, if you will, the curse of being a process improvement guy. We look at these things and we say, there's got to be a better way, or why did they do it that way? And I'm on the advisory board of Binghamton University and their System Science and Industrial Engineering department. And I give them the new students basically a greeting, and I tell them that they've probably selected the single worst profession out of all the professions that are available. They've picked the worst, and they're all looking at me like, oh, what am I getting into? And I said, listen, if you're a lawyer, at the end of the day, you close your books, you go home, you're done,
Yeah.
right? If you're a carpenter, you put down your tools, you go home, and you're done, right? But if you're an industrial or systems engineer, a continuous improvement person, we're at the grocery store,
right?
You can't unsee it. Honest to God, why do they stack the cans that way? I have a friend. He was a director of OpEx at Cummins, and he retired. And about a month after he retires, he shares on LinkedIn that he got in trouble with his wife because he started optimizing the way the kitchen was set up. And it's like, dude, what a rookie mistake. You know what I mean? It's like, this is, this has been her domain for however many years, okay, decades. And here you are upsetting the apple cart. I mean, what about the voice of the customer? Didn't you even consult with her? And it's like,
well,
when Mrs. This is the way we are.
Fox, when Mrs. Fox went away on a trip to London to see something or other, she came back and she went, "What is all that on the windowsill?" I said, "I'm sick of going to the shop." So I just said to the kids, "If you can't be asked, put it in the bin, put it on the windowsill. At least I know what you've run out of." And she went, "This isn't happening anymore."
It was a Kanban system. Did you explain to her?
It was the most simple form, the empty packages you trigger. And the joke of it is, I use that same system in companies and it works.
That's right.
Because it's not complicated. And that's my frustration, that with so many things, people try and overcomplicate them. And
that's
ridiculously overcomplicate them.
That's too funny, Tim.
Yeah.
So I have to say, several years ago, 2017, I published my book. I'm working on a second one now. And it was funny when I published it, people are saying, "Oh, that's great. When are you going to write another one?" It's like, dude, I just, took 3 years to write this one, like, back off, man. And I wrote an article. The first article I wrote, I had to put everything down after I had written as much as I was going to write. And I had to set it down for a while. And then people would ask me, geez, I always wanted to write a book. Why, do you have any pointers, or what was your journey like? So the first article I wrote afterwards was entitled, "So You Want to Write a Book?" And it basically just detailed my journey, if you will. But there's a lot of people that talk about writing them, and very, very few actually do. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have written a book, and happy to share it here. Swarm of Change. It's a nice read. It's a lighthearted read too. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in there, but it flows. I mean, it's just a fun storytelling read, and I think that the best lessons are not delivered forensically. They're delivered through storytelling, anecdotes, and metaphors and similes and what have you. So anyway, I wanted to first off, congratulate you on
Thank you.
accomplishing something that so few people actually accomplish, even though they wanted to. So the first question I have to ask is, what motivated you to write a book? Why did you write this book?
It's so funny, this year, 2025, I didn't plan to write a book. It wasn't even in my head. And this story has been played out on LinkedIn over the next few days as to how it all came to be. Because when I was with the Manufacturing Institute first time around 2002, the first time I left there, I thought, wow, I've just learned so much. And colleague Stuart Mitten, he keeps reminding me. He said, the first day we met, he said, you said to me, imagine what we'll know in 4 years' time. Well, we knew so much more after 4 years. And I vaguely contemplated then. And then when I finished my 2 year stint at this organization, and we changed it radically, we got the lead time down from sort of 6 weeks down to next day for 50% of the products that we made. And again, I was thinking about it then, but only idle thoughts. But 12 years ago, literally, I scribbled a spider diagram in a book and wrote out what I thought could be in a book. And then I just went, it'll just be a dry book. And so it just got shoved in a cupboard and not forgotten about. I knew exactly where it was, but forgotten about to the extent of I'm never going to write a book if it's going to be a dry book. And we were away this year in April, early April, and I was just mindlessly scrolling on Facebook, and there was an image of a drunk bee outside a hive, and it wasn't allowed in because it was drunk, and it had got drunk because the nectar ferments there, and the bouncer bees keep them out. And I was like, "What? They're not called bouncer bees, for goodness sake." Yes, they are. And then I started to Google around the whole topic, and it was like, yes, and there's funeral bees, and there's worker bees, which I knew about. And then I suddenly thought, flipping heck, I remember going to see like a screen showing like a natural history thing about bees when I was at primary school in Manchester. I was like, oh wow, and I was intrigued then, but never sufficient to sort of be a beekeeper or anything like that. I mean, ask any of my family members, I'm like a screaming girl when you show me a bee up until a couple of years ago. And but then it really just got me thinking, hang on a minute, this could be a vehicle for all of my thoughts. And I just double checked it, and could it be anything else? And ants was definitely off the list as what I've posted this morning, because they love structure. They just love structure, and if they lose the scent, they'll just carry on marching until they die, unfortunately. But also, there's a bigger thing around bees, and I think it's missed on so many people that a lot of what we do isn't necessarily the right things. And if we don't have bees, we're all done for, because they don't pollinate, and if we don't pollinate, the whole ecosystem collapses. And for me, that resonates with people as well. If you don't treat people right, the company isn't a company anymore, or it's not a company of any worth. So for me, it was then, wow, I found this thing that I could use, and I just started idly playing with talking into my phone, because Word is so easy to use on a phone now. You can just dictate and it gets it mostly right, even with my accent, northern accent. So it gets it straight, pretty much straight away. So there's very little prattling around, and it was all so easy that I was just like, let's go for it. And literally it wrote itself, because I had the backbone of what I wanted to put into it. There's a few things that aren't included in it, and I struggled with it, and I just said no, they're not going in. They don't fit with the story. Yes, they're great things that I've used, but they don't fit, so they're not going in. And I was at John's conference the other week, and people were saying, "Well, how do you start improvement?" And I was like, "Well, if you're a small organization, you really need to start with runners and repeaters." So that didn't make the book, but the essence of value streams did. So not everything's in there. It's not a toolbox of 101 of how to do change from Tim Fox and everything that he ever uses. But all the chapters just flowed so nicely. So, and then I started thinking, well, I could start messing around, and that's where excellence happens comes from,
Mhm.
because so many people try and build a framework, and it's like, guys, there's no framework here. There's just follow the absolute fundamentals, please, and the rest will follow. And a colleague of mine, she said to me, um, she said, just follow the process, Tim. When we first started at the Manufacturing Institute, she just said, just follow the process and it will flow. It will follow. Everything will follow. And it does. It really does. So for me, I just followed the process of this is what should be in it. And gags suddenly got popped in there, some names that are people you asked before who's inspired me, and some of those names are in there. I haven't linked them and I'm not going to link them, but there are names in there that are synonymous with individuals who've helped me along the time. But I just thoroughly enjoyed it, like you wouldn't believe I enjoyed it. So it wrote itself. So that was April, and I was asked to do a keynote much earlier on in the year, way before April. And they said the topic's waste. And I was like, dead easy, do that falling off a log, no problem whatsoever. And then it suddenly realized that actually, although the book isn't finished, I could actually use some of the elements that are in the book. And I checked with the guys who were running it, and they said, yeah, absolutely, go for it. So I did my keynote on it, and then somebody went and asked the flipping tricky question, when's it out? And I was like, I haven't got a target, I haven't got a deadline. It's just not me to force myself in that way. I was having way too much fun writing it. So at that point, it was like, better get serious now. So that's what I did. Got serious, and a few weeks later, it was ready to publish. So that's how it got to be as quick as
That's
that.
funny. That's really fun. That's a funny story.
It's real though. That's the
Yeah,
silly thing.
that's
It actually happened like that. So yeah,
my book was 80,000 words, and my publisher and my substantive editor kept on saying it's got to get down. It's got to get down to 60,000 words because it's too much. And it was like 80,000 words. That's the way it is. And and that was a
yeah,
3-year project. And there was 6 months of it I had to put it down because it was just like words on a page. I'd read the same page over and
yeah,
over again, and it just
yeah,
didn't register. So I had to put it down and walk
yeah,
away for a little while. But when I wrote that article, so you want to write a book, it was 13,000 words, and I wrote it in 2 days.
yeah,
Okay, so it's like a seventh of the book that I published, and it was in 2 days. And sometimes when it just flows, it flows, right? I mean,
yeah,
you just get into the zone, and it just comes out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that
And
sounds like you're in the zone when you're writing this book.
absolutely. And I say writing, most of it was dictating, to be honest. And then
Yeah.
I'd be refining it. And then my eldest daughter had written books as a teen, and none of them got published. But she was like, could they? Should they? And I was like, whatever you want to do. Anyway, it never happened. But she's got a keen eye for reading these things, and I'd literally just WhatsApp her a chapter and say, what do you think? And she'd go, it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow. There is a problem with this bit. And I'd reply, no, no, no. You don't know what's coming. And she was like, okay, I'll trust you. Grammatically, this bit's wrong, this bit's wrong, this bit's wrong. But other than that, I'll just trust you. And she was reading it to her kids. She was reading it. So she's got, how old are they now? A 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, the two elder grandkids. She was reading some of it, the bedtime story. I was like, I hope you're not breaking any confidentiality here, Anna. But they were loving it as well. They were absolutely
Well,
loving it.
now at our briefing, I was just talking about the book with you, and then I noticed that your name isn't on the cover at all. I mean, it's like nowhere. Um, and
Yeah,
what was your thought process? I mean, it's on the inside of the book, of course, and
yeah.
but what was your thought process there?
Uh, I suppose a lot of my stuff that I've done, nobody, unless you were in the company at the time, you wouldn't have known I'd done it. Um, I did loads of stuff for Mars, and loads of it was published in papers and all sorts. But I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want. I want the book to be owned by people, and I've got my. God, it's going to sound really terrible now. I've still got the books that I had when I did my apprenticeship, all of the workbooks where it had some text, and then you'd be asked to sketch in it. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that concept of writing in a book. Some books I'll happily write in, other ones I cherish and never will bend a corner of the page sort of thing. But I wanted to write something that was more than just a reading book. It became almost something to come back to. And quite a few of the early readers, I had quite a lineup of people who I literally just pinged and I hadn't heard from them in 10, 12 years. They hadn't heard from me in the same sort of time period. And I just went, do you fancy reading this?
Mhm.
And they kept on giving me the same feedback, which is it made me think. It really made me think. I would read a chapter, get caught up in the story, and then it would make me think again. I was like, well, maybe I've done something. So the whole reasoning for not having my name on the cover is if someone else wants to put their name on the cover, their name's the prominent one. Because for me, it's about the person. So I didn't want my name to try and overshadow anybody else's. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm with somebody and I'm coaching somebody, it's them that's the important one. It's not me.
Right.
I've just been fortunate, I suppose is the word, to have come across some really, really smart people, some really nice people who've mentored and coached me. So they were never, it's me, me, me. So I just carried on in the same vein as far as I was concerned. So my name's not on it, so other people can put their name on it if they
Right.
wish,
Right.
and they can
So
be the prominent ones.
so you've evolved the book so that's more experiential. Uh, you have
Mm.
some things that you've developed that are that where the book is the epicenter, but some aids and things of that nature. Can you share with the audience a little bit of that?
It's tricky because not on public release yet.
Uh,
we're,
well,
we're,
by the
we're
time the book,
piloting. No. We are piloting them, and the message is going out in the new year. But just to sort of, I had a massive confidence issue of, I'm Tim Fox. Who am I? What am I writing here? And I had loads of questions of, is it any good? And it's been a theme that's been running for a while. I got fantastic reviews from so many people, and I'm really, really wowed by all of those things. But I've got a capstone now, and we're going to stop saying, is it any good? Because too many people have read it now to say, I can't argue with it. I can't argue with it. People are saying it's good, so okay, I'll take it. It's good. It was always the intent that problem solving or solving problems for me is the absolute crazy bit. We try and make people master problem solvers, and they haven't even solved the basic things first. I've had people come to me as practitioners or interview for practitioner roles when I've been going out and helping businesses, and they sit in front of you, and I say, okay, let's start with the basics. Tell me what the lean principles are, and they go, um, okay, let's move on. Workplace organization. Oh, 5S, 5C. Yeah, 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 that's the topic. Could you give me the 5S? And they go, and one person got really, really antsy and he said, I didn't expect to be tested like this today at this interview. And I said, I didn't expect somebody to be sat opposite me claiming to be this person, and clearly they're not. And I said to the other two, I says, I think we're done with this interviewer. Because for me, stop faking it, guys. You either know it or you don't know it. And problem solving is huge. There isn't one solution fits all. I think the 12 step that's in the book gets close to being a repeatable methodology, but even then it's not the 100% solution, because every environment, every problem is different. So I created these read it cards, which are like a bookmark, and it tells you what to do after reading the book. For me, it's read the book and then see something, so know the wastes. And I know I'll be heavily criticized. I've put 10 in there, but if you're a small business, variation and overburden are absolutely huge and need calling out. So for me, they're part of the waste set. I was slow to adopt skills from
Mhm.
7 to 8, but there's 10, and that's where the hornet just above my finger is now epitomizing those wastes. So it's there. You've got the acronym. Challenge people and just make sure everybody knows it, because why should I be the only one going into a supermarket and being frustrated with all of the waste that I see? Let everybody else enjoy that. And then on the back or the front, whichever way you want to look at it, it's who's reading and where they're reading to, and just where the white text is here. There's something called a buzz block, which again was very much key from day one. I'd said I want it to be an exercise in there, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it. But as I went into the story and I started layering the story, it suddenly became apparent that we could use the same environment to repeat the same group of people being challenged by the same sort of problem, but viewing it from all sorts of different angles. And as a consequence, some people have read it independently and then haven't really thought about it. But then when I've mentioned it to them, they went, "Oh yeah, that was repeated quite a bit." Yeah, it was deliberately repeated in there quite a bit. But like a crossword or one of my favorite turn my brain off moments is a Sudoku. I just love it because you're just practicing is not all the time when you're doing a Sudoku in my mind.
Right.
But rather than just having the answers, um, in the book, what I've done is I've got this paper block, and it works to basically stop certain chapters from being read. So where the answers are, you can continue reading the book, but you just don't get the answers because it's all too easy to see the answer and then go, "Oh, I know what it was." It's like, hang on a minute, you've just cheated. You've seen the answer. So for me, if you're going to read it as a leader, what stops you then giving me a shout, and then I'll send you these for free. The more than happy to send these for free. Need to check my mailing costs around the world, but um, and I say that because one book's in Brazil and one book I know is in Toronto, such is the wonder of Amazon. But
This
yeah,
copy's in
yeah,
New York.
yeah. No, one in New York, Germany. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm happy to send out some of those read it cards to people so that they can read with their team. And then there's some questions that I'll provide. Um, the old beekeeper's making an appearance now and again, and he's going to write out some questions that people can ask. But again, we're not making this too easy. The leaders aren't going to have the answers. They need to know the answers themselves. They need to have read the
Right.
book. No charlatans, I'm
Right.
sorry. And
That's excellent.
so that's the reveal that's going to start coming about in January, just to share some of those things. So I don't know when you're planning on publishing it. So not everyone will see it. So maybe not too many spoilers out there. So
Not too many, but I would guess that we'll publish this sometime in the middle of December. It being like the 2nd
perfect.
of December now. So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
good,
yeah.
excellent, excellent.
So
Well,
yeah, all of those were baked in. The layers were woven in because there are so few problem solving things that I've come across where the environment's the same and the group of people challenged on the problem's the same. There's some great ones with, you're stuck in an ice station, what are you going to do? You're stuck on a boat, what are you going to do? Um, there's a really good one from Northgate Training, which I've used for many, many years. But again, it's limited in that one environment, and then you move to another environment, and people don't can't necessarily get that association. So hence why it's in the book.
So I have to ask, this is sort of a question I like to ask all my guests. Just take a moment to think about it. Is um, if you had a do-over, somewhere in your life, if you had a do-over, what would it be? Why would you think it's a do-over? And what would you do differently?
So if I had to do something again in my life that I've already done, and if I had the opportunity to do it at some other point, or go back in time, if you will.
And take a different course, like you made a suboptimal decision. And what would that might be, and what would you do different?
I think I'd need to apologize every Friday, every month we had a practitioners meeting and I'd kick off, and I was known for it. And I'd just get frustrated with some of the guests that came in to talk about their latest thing that they could help manufacturers with. And I'd kick off because I'd be going, sorry, 2-3%. Is that all you're offering? That's the big reveal. Sorry, 5%. Is that all you're offering? I'd be like, why are we entertaining these people talking about 2 or 3%? Because we go out and deliver 15, 20, 100% productivity improvements. And I have in the past. And I'd just get frustrated. I don't know whether it was red mist or what, but Stuart, who I mentioned before, he was my team leader, bless, for a period of time. And he said to him, you've just got to stop this. And I was like, I'll stop it. But come the meeting, I just couldn't stop myself. People would purposely sit next to me and kick me. I just couldn't stop myself. I just couldn't. It was just like, will you stop it? You're telling people about, yeah, it's possibly a really good thing, but the effort that you're saying versus what we're already delivering, and that wasn't being big-headed or anything like that. I was just frustrated. Learn the wastes, go and spend some time looking at them. And
Right.
there's loads of opportunity out there, but why are we still talking about this so many years on? Have we overcomplicated it? Have we just got too mad in terms of acronym world, and all the acronym activists out there? For me, I just got frustrated. So apologies to anybody who came to a Friday meeting at the Manufacturing Institute last Friday of the month, because I reflect now and I think, God, what else? And I shouldn't have done it. And I apologize to all those presenters who I perhaps roasted as well. Did I mean to at the time? Yeah, I did. Would I do it again? Probably not, because I probably didn't. I probably didn't
So,
express what we were doing in the best light. I just got angry.
as a follow-up to that, do you think in your presentations anybody's ever thought of that of you?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure, because I don't stand still. In fact, we're, we're running a pilot program at the minute, and I've got a couple of people who I hadn't spoken to in, gosh, one of them I hadn't spoken to in 16 years, and he read the book. He had an early copy, and he went, Tim, it's amazing. How can I help? I was like, what? And he was like, I've got a year where I can help if you wish. I'll come and help. Obviously, he's just starting up on his own. So he was like, yeah, I'm sure going to look for opportunities, but I'll help. And he's been with me. There's another guy who's also been with me. And we finished one of the presentations, and they just went, you've just gone off piste again. If this is to be something that we're going to deliver, can you stop going off piste? And they gave me a massive roasting. We were talking about overhead projectors earlier on, and for me, it's your audience. So for me, I want to deliver value for the people who are sat in front of me. And if the thing that we're talking about isn't the thing that they need, or they're bored, or they haven't got it, that PowerPoint's just going to be pushed to one side, and we're just going to talk about the things that they really need to know about. I've delivered presentations on percentages so many times. I'm like, why does the world not know about percentages? Because for me, it's it's your de facto straightforward. Everything's measured on the same base,
Right.
but people don't get it. So if I need to teach that today, I'll teach it today. And when I say today, I'm not going to teach you, but
Right.
if somebody tomorrow I'm working with and they don't get it, I'm going to spend 5-10 minutes explaining it to them because it's important, because I don't want to lose anybody as we go along. So I think colleagues will often look at what I'm doing and going, why did you do that? And I'll say, because the audience didn't get what we were going to be talking about. So that's
Right.
why I flipped it. And some of my most enjoyable presentations that I do, or coaching sessions that I do, is just using a whiteboard. And I just try and get it all on sort of 2 or 3 whiteboards and say to people, photograph it now, because at the end it'll look so different to what we're talking about. Capture that point, Google it on your phone, check me out, see whether I'm telling you pork pies or am I telling you the truth. And very quickly you sort of build that rapport with people, and they enjoy it. And for me, the trying to get people comfortable and safe, psychologically safe, so that they can participate is huge for me. And hopefully the route that I've defined with the sea change and buzz is one that isn't going to be that people are going to have to present and practice for days on end and be rehearsed. I want the small changes. So didn't tell you this either. Sorry, Joseph. There's a website of the same name, and my aim is to have just loads of changes.
Websites, Swarm of Change.
Yeah, swarmofchange.com. And the plan is come January, we're going to start populating it with lots of small changes that people have made. I've got 2 or 3 already from people who've read the book, and then suddenly it's ignited a spark, and they've gone, and I've gone and done this. And I coached somebody earlier in the year, still asking him a question, is it any good? And I exclusively used the book to coach him with. He'd read certain chapters, and then we'd go and talk them through. And he was an engineering manager, small team, and he immediately said, I'm just running out of stuff all the time. And I said, well, what do you want to do about it? He says, I just want a list. I said, well, put a list up. And he went, well, it's not very professional, is it? I said, well, what's your list going to be? He says, things I've run out of and things that I'm nearly going to run out of. And I went, works. And that's what he did. He implemented that change straight away. And then in very short order, the other engineers were made responsible for different areas of the store, so on pneumatics, etc. And in that space of time, suddenly they started to capture all the shortages, so that the time to respond to breakdowns, the machine downtime was reduced. So it was just mega. And I've had similar ones since, and for that's what the website's going to be, is a myriad of small changes that people make. We're not going to go, I implemented this project that did this to this. That comes later. That, give people the confidence to do it once, and then have them go around again. That's the whole swarm idea.
Right.
Unravel all of the mysteries that exist in our businesses. I'd like to say manufacturing businesses, because that's where my heart is. But I know people are reading it who are in retail. I know there's some people reading it who are in the NHS. God bless them. We are starting to see a slow tide of change there. But the more changes that we can get, and get those flipping wastes out of the business, as I like to call them, the hornets, and trap that hornet with a houndnet, and just get them out of the business. It can only make businesses better. So let's just focus on the basics. I think if I'd written a book about the 8 wastes, it wouldn't quite have stuck the same. But there is a lot more to it than just the 8, 10 wastes, whichever your preference is.
Well, I think that everybody's written those books, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to have a novel approach, something that draws people in, that maybe gives them a different perspective. That's why, even my book was entitled State of Readiness. It didn't
Yeah.
have anything to do with the word operational excellence or continuous improvement or whatnot,
Yeah.
because then I would have just been, one of the many. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And well, I mean, state of readiness. You're a scout, right? Be prepared. That was the motto. And
BEE,
it's the
that'll be
same.
the
What's that?
BEE. BEE.
That's right. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
all right, my
absolutely.
friend. Well, listen, I want to,
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time out of your day to have this conversation with me. I'm sure that you're going to find much success with your book and
Thank
all the
you.
practice that you're building around it. Uh, I would certainly recommend it to anybody that's starting out with the subject of continuous improvement, even though I really do feel sorry for them embarking on that as a career, as I made mention
Yeah.
earlier. But
Yeah, go and spoil your weekly shop or however frequently you go, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, I'm afraid. You're
it's
absolutely
so.
right. Yeah.
All right,
Awesome.
Tim. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed also, Joseph. And thank you for taking the time to read the book and feedback to
Pleasure.
everyone. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. I think that was a pretty good session. What do you think?
Ah, I don't think I ummed and ahed. So for me, that's the mark of, did it go well? Did I and ah
Yeah.
too much?
Yeah. No, no,
I'm
no.
just
I
conscious
thought it
of
was just
a
fine.
shine on my nose now, so that was the only thing. I was going to move the light
Well, I had it
partway
on.
through, but I thought, no,
I
I won't. I'll just
Yeah. Well,
slightly move away. No,
that's it.
I was bowled over with that. You have a very nice, natural way of just leading the conversation, and for me, it was just like chatting to you as if we were sat in the room together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's how it's supposed to be. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. No, it's been most enjoyable, and I still am struggling, or had struggled quite extensively with that question of, is it any good? And I don't know whether you've seen the latest. I don't look at them, to be honest, but I've had three reviews on Amazon. The first one popped up almost instantaneously as soon as the book was
yeah.
published, and that was the guy who I coached.
And it
Uh,
was obviously positive.
yeah,
I think it's going to take some time to get some momentum.
yeah,
And I think that what you have to do is what you're doing, put it out there, have the conversations,
yeah,
get the traction and go from there. I mean,
yeah,
I'm still getting keynote speeches and requests for addressing corporations. Here it is, 2020, call it 2026. Mine came out almost 10 years ago. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
it's, um, as long as it's going to be, it's well received, it's well written, it's an easy read. So I'm sure you're going to have much success with it.
Well, that capstone that I was talking about, spoiler alert, because what I'm doing over the course of December, all of this idea popped into my head. I do a regular week in Ireland at the minute,
Mhm.
and this idea popped into my head. Um, I like to prod people. I really
Right?
do like to prod people. So the whole AI thing just bugs the life out of me. Just annoys me tremendously. So I've got AT, which is all true and all Tim. So every post that's going out over the next 20 odd days has got hashtag AT on it, no other words, and then just the slides. And they're all real, either screenshots or photos that I've taken, apart from one that went out today about the ants, the marching ants. But again, it was a screenshot of my post that I put up ages
Right.
ago.
Right.
And that whole all true is culminating in the last review. And when I was at John's conference, I met Carl Clem, ex-president of Toyota,
Yep.
and he was doing a keynote. He's put a review on Amazon for me, and I literally bumped into him at 8:10 Tuesday morning, first through the door sort of thing. And I thought, I'm sure that's him. But again, in his, he's very proper with his tie and
Right.
everything. But he wasn't then. He was just wearing a casual shirt and jeans. And I was like, I think it's him anyway. I says, Carl, isn't it? And he went, yeah, yeah, yeah. He says, Tim, isn't it? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah. And I says, I asked you a while ago about, have you read my book? And he said, I'm reading it now. I was like, what? And it wasn't one of those, they say you shouldn't be your heroes or you shouldn't be you shouldn't be fan zone of anybody. I've never subscribed to that. Never, ever, ever. If I meet somebody famous, I meet somebody famous, whoopee. Yeah. Um, and from that point on, we just chatted. And so many people have said, have you worked with Toyota people? And I've said, no, never met them, hardly ever met them. But I now know 3 Toyota people, ex-Toyota leaders, and they're just so different. They're just so different in the way that they talk. So all of that coaching and coaching of others that they do, they just turn out to be better people. And we just had so many good conversations over the 2 days that
it's interesting. Are they better people because they worked for Toyota, or did Toyota hire them because they're better people? This is an interesting quandary, right? I mean, I think that most people have set their personality by the time they're 25. They got their values, they got and so maybe, just maybe, they didn't become that way because they worked for Toyota. Maybe Toyota hired them because they're that way.
And allowed them to continue to be that way.
Yeah. And honed their skills and developed them and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I still don't, I tolerate fools very badly. I said so, on a Friday. I used to lambast these people who came in and tried to pretend that they'd got something that was fab that wasn't. And I'll tell you a quick anecdote. So I went to this Black Tie Do, this organization. We made indoor athletics equipment, and it's big in the UK. It's like the largest mass participation sport in the UK, and it's winter athletics, but they call it sports hall athletics because it's all done in a sports hall during the winter period. So this is their season now. And the guy who created it is the son now runs the operation, and a lot of Olympians started out through sports hall athletics. So Dame Kelly Holmes, she went through the system. I went to this Black Tie Do, and I'm stood there with the development director, and we're just chatting to this lass. We're nothing. We weren't even talking about sport or anything at all. We were just chatting. And then loads of people came up and they were like, oh, Denise, oh, it's lovely to see you. Oh, I'm so glad you're here this evening. Oh, I can't wait for your speech later. Anyway, this happened a few times. And then I just sussed it. She went, what? I said, I know who you are now. And she goes, really? I said, yep. I said, your name's Denise. And she went, yeah, it is. I says, I haven't quite got your surname yet, though. And she went, it's Denise Lewis. And I went, nice to meet you, Denise Lewis. What do you do? And she says, heptathlon. I went, okay. Decathlon. I said, oh, that's 10, isn't it? She went, yeah, that's 10. Because we sold a decathlon kit that had 10 activities in it.
Yeah.
And I says, you any good? And she went, gold in the Olympics. I went, not too shabby then. Yeah, I like it. And she was just bowled over with the fact that I wasn't at all interested or all of that fanzine stuff that comes about. So since then, I mean, I've never been a fanzine person, but I've since then, if I meet somebody who's like mega in the world, yeah, I'm going to be respectful. I am going to be 100% respectful, but
it's funny that you say that, because several years ago, many years ago, there was a Supreme Court judge, New York Supreme Court judge. I called him Crazy Pants because he used to wear crazy pants, all right?
Right.
And he was a little bit out there. Anyway, he said, you want to go to a party? I'm in New York City. You want to go to a party? And it's like, Judge, what do you got in mind? And he says, well, it's Tony Bennett's birthday, and I'm going to his birthday party. It's in at an Italian joint. I said, Tony Bennett? I mean, like the Tony Bennett? He says, yeah. So I go with it. Sure, Judge. He's a little bit schnockered. So we go there. And sure enough, Irving Fields is playing the piano, and Diana Krall and Tony Bennett are singing, and it's a who's who of all of the the showbiz, New York City showbiz people. Billy Crystal's there, Jerry Seinfeld's there. I happen to be standing next to Jackie Mason, and his granddaughter was standing next to him. And she had just graduated from Binghamton University, where I went to school, and I'm also on the advisory board there.
Yeah.
And so everything is and I had a camera with me, a little tiny one of those, the phones weren't as sophisticated as they are today. It's a little pocket camera, but I didn't take it out because everybody was talking to me like I belonged. Okay.
Yeah.
And I knew damn well, as soon as I brought that thing up, the illusion would have been shattered. You know what I mean? The moment would have been shattered. I would I would have extracted myself from them. So but they were coming up to me, and we were chatting as just like you and I are chatting. Just two guys. Forget the stardom, forget all that other bullshit. It was just like they were real conversations, and it was kind of cool. I did have to help the judge into a car later on. A meatball rolled down his shirt, and he was all really, well.
Goodness.
So,
question for you.
Tim, I got to get going, but go on. Sure.
Very, very quick question. So after the index, the book changes, and we get a different perspective from the beekeepers.
Uh-huh.
How did that resonate with you? Because I haven't asked anybody.
What was the question again? Sorry.
So when you get all the way up to the index, up to about page 150 odd, you hear it from the bee's perspective, and there's a bigger game at play. So on page 169, it's the advocate shares, and the advocate is the advocate for the bees. And then we go into a few chapters then where Bob then talks about how he took on the hive from other people. I was just curious as to how you felt that fitted.
I think an external perspective always adds fidelity to what you're reading. Okay. In fact, I was just having a debate yesterday with a guy from Germany. And he didn't understand a perspective and disagreed with me because he's a German and he knows German, the culture better. And I said, listen, you know it only from the inside being one. Okay. Yeah. From the outside, there's a different perspective. Okay. Of your inside. I have a different perspective of the German culture than you do being a German because you're on the inside. And I think that additional perspective adds a level of fidelity, contextual fidelity to the rest of the story or to the rest of the context.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had an MD ring me up, and he's only partway through, and he went, "By the way, bees don't live that long." And I was like, "Read the rest of the book, Job." So
all right, my friend, listen, I got to get running here. So thank you very much for your time, and I will give you a sneak peek when I get it sorted.
Smashing. Thank you ever so much, Joseph. Really appreciate it.
Take care, Tim. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to State of Readiness. You can discover more episodes and learn about the book written by Joseph Paris of the same title at www.state-of-readiness.com. You can learn more about Joseph Paris at www.josephparis.me/card.